I've never had a client be like, my relationship is worse with my dog now. Hey guys. Welcome
Hello.
back.
It's us.
We're here.
We are.
We're here in mind, body, and spirit.
Ready to talk. What are we talking about?
What are we armchair training today? Sorry, I saw a hate comment that was like, look at these armchair dog trainers.
What does that mean?
Kind of like
Sitting.
an armchair quarterback
Oh,
type
No.
of thing where you
Yeah.
talk a lot of shit while you're sitting down not doing
Yeah.
it.
I think people get confused that this is a podcast, so you're supposed to, but believe me, we are in the trenches every day.
We spend approximately 1 hour a week doing this, and the other 39 plus of our work weeks are literally hands-on with clients and training dogs. So
a comment about like my shelter, like because I triggered the shelter people.
oh no.
Oh boy.
It was like, you have all these opinions, but you're not going out there and helping the dogs that you're talking about.
You're shit talking the wrong girl over there.
Yes, I am. I'm out here. I'm in the trenches. I'm working with these dogs.
You also worked in rescue,
Yes.
specifically for a long time.
So people that are commenting on the podcast, like, you don't do anything.
Do you
think
know
that?
us?
Yeah.
Feel
Sorry.
free to keep
I don't know
leaving
you.
them. There's nothing
You don't know
wrong
me?
with it, but you're
We
not
are.
right. You're
We're
not
training
We're out here
Yes.
doing stuff, okay?
Yeah.
5 days a week, baby.
And honestly, like outside of that,
Yes.
Yeah.
like, I mean, our clients have access to us all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sending emails, taking calls, training dogs.
So,
We run that shit.
yeah.
But anyways,
We're not just social media dog trainers, okay?
No.
yeah.
Because I agree with you. I don't like those either.
Yeah.
Nobody does.
No
Yeah.
one does. But that's not what we are. You're a bit confused.
And if you're going to make like a hate comment, like, can you at least make it like accurate? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Call us out on something that
if
matters.
it's something that isn't like factually true, it's a lot harder to receive it. And then I'm just going to
and we're
laugh
here
at
for
it.
that, you
when
know?
people comment,
That's why we
like,
do the
hateful
podcast.
comments on your appearance, you're like, good one.
Yeah.
Great. You
Wow.
really got me there.
Not me. And it's the man that lives at home with his mom and stays on the computer all day.
Yep. Anywho, what do you guys want to talk about? Any ideas? Bridget, you had a little bit of an idea.
Yes. So I was thinking about discussing what inconsistent use of the Ecollar or your criterias do to your dog. So we'll have this happen from time to time where we can tell when a client is not being consistent with their dog's training. And that's not judgment of clients. It's just sometimes it happens. And the effects of what that can do to your relationship with your dog and your training goals. So I thought that would be a little interesting to discuss.
That is a good one.
Yeah. What's a big example that you would use in that situation?
So when I was doing one-on-one lessons, from time to time, we'd have clients that would very clearly not ever use the e-collar in between sessions. So whenever their dog came to training, sometimes their dog would have a little bit of a more nervous response because that's the only time that the dog ever received correction is in the training session. So this isn't to say that we weren't trying or we weren't educating the client of the benefits of being able to perform this at home, but week by week some clients would come in with talking about the same issues and they'd be like, well, we didn't correct it, or what we said no, but we didn't correct it, but no stopped him, so we didn't have to use the e-collar. Or
That's a big one.
people will be like, all I have to do is show my dog the e-collar and they stop. So
I threw up in my mouth
Yes.
when you said that.
Yeah,
Made me
that's a
nauseous.
really big one.
When people say like, well, we just like basically threaten our dog with the sight of the e-collar, I'm like, please stop.
Yeah. Please stop doing that. Your dog should not have an emotional response to the visual sight of anything to do with the training equipment. That should not happen. If that's happening, then you're doing something to like make that happen.
Right.
Yeah. And it's not to say like this doesn't happen all the time where we have inconsistent use of the e-collar, because I think we're all pretty good at doing our job and communicating to our clients, and we attract a set of clients that wants to see that change. But from time to time, it's very clear when a client is not being consistent about a certain issue and the effects that has on their dog long term.
Yep. And I think that's where the e-collars get a bad rep in that situation, is because when they're obviously any tool that's used inappropriately or misused, then obviously bad things can come of it. So there are right ways to do it and wrong ways to do it. And you know, again, our job is to educate and make sure that the clients are using it appropriately so that you have the responses and the relationship that it's meant to be. But yeah, I definitely think that there are situations where, especially the showing the e-collar or the remote and saying no and seeing the response but not getting the correction. As a board and train, I see that a lot with like first follow-ups. Like a week after the board and train, they go home, they have a week to kind of be with the parents and stuff. They come back for their first follow-up, and that's a response I get a lot of times. I say no, and they fix themselves, so I haven't been giving corrections. But, you know, I try to explain to them that like the reason they're doing that now is because they've been in such good routine of hearing the no marker and expecting the correction as a consequence of them breaking it. So they are fixing themselves right now. Yeah. If you continue on this path of just saying no, very quickly the dogs are going to realize that your standards are not the same as my standards. And they're going to start continuing to push that. Yeah. Right. And it's also just something where it's just like, that's awesome that you have to just say no and they fix themselves. But that's also not the point of the training. The point of the training is that they just don't make the mistake at all. You know? So the only way you're going to do that is by actually giving a correction when you're marking that no, you know?
Yeah, the goal is not that they listen to no. The goal is that you didn't have to say no.
Exactly.
But because you eradicate it, you have to be pretty consistent with your no markers and following up with that, and not just leaving good enough alone where, oh, the dog stopped barking or this dog stopped jumping. Like you consistently need to take those moments and follow through and be dependable and have your dog understand the set of rules. So ultimately we don't have to chase the dog around and correct them, or those behaviors are escalating or worsening. And then we have the discussion of fallout with e-collars and inconsistent use, or giving your dog sometimes or freebies chances is going to cause your dog to be more nervous because they can never depend on what your response is going to be. Sometimes you're okay with jumping. Other times you get really serious and nail them for it. Yeah. That's not fair.
Yeah.
No. And that's when you'll see like their whole demeanor change. And when people will be like, oh, the e-collar is making them upset. Like it's almost a weird self-fulfilling prophecy with those certain clients that don't want to use the e-collar, but will use it in sessions, because what happens is like the first couple sessions, the dog is fine. And then once they realize such a stark dichotomy of like, this is literally the only place that I have punishment. And it's not even that it's an e-collar punishment. It's just a punishment in general. It could be anything. But if they live their lives free of punishment everywhere else, and then suddenly we use punishment in this context, then the dog shows up and they're nervous and they're unsure because I don't know what the rules are going to be and when I'm going to get punished for stuff because it hasn't been consistent. And then the client ends up going, see, the e-collar makes them nervous. That's why I don't use it. Yeah. And it's like, no, it makes them nervous because you weren't using it. Right. It's more so that like you're creating the issue. It's not you're seeing it and trying to avoid it. So it's just super important that if you're gonna do training that involves corrections and punishment, you have to be 100% confident in what you're doing and okay with what you're doing, because if you half-ass it, it's not going to work. Yep. The same way that if you half-ass any training, it's not going to work. But am I, willing to admit that the consequences of inconsistent punishment are probably a little bit more detrimental than inconsistent reinforcement? Yeah. That's just kind of the name of, that's just the reality of it. I mean, the same with kids, right? Like if you inconsistently punish them for something, that creates a very unstable, nervous, confused child. right? So that's where you just have to be a little bit more careful of, if you're going to go the route of using punishment, you have to be comfortable and confident in what you're doing and know what you're doing.
Yeah. And it's also like, again, only relating to the board and trains, but it's something that it's so important to, what I try to tell the owners is that being consistent sooner than later, right? Because
right off the bat.
Because you do get that inconsistency where, if you have that week of freedom, well, I haven't seen them in 4 weeks. I just want them home. I just wanted to kind of like let them kind of get comfortable again and stuff. I'm like, yeah, them getting comfortable is falling back into those old routines.
Exactly.
So if we're not getting on it now, and you're not being strict now, then it's going to fall back. And it's something where, not getting on them right away, you're not creating those habits where, you're going to fall and see those pushes even more so, more likely resulting in higher levels as you have to go, if you're correcting, if you're using way lower levels, even if they are correcting, but they're purposely using lower levels than needed, the dog can get desensitized to those where it forces them to work even higher, so you're kind of like putting yourself in a bad situation if you're not correcting your dog appropriately.
You're being selfish.
Yeah, you're being selfish.
All of your tactics of, you're telling yourself that you're being nice to your dog. In reality, you're being nice to yourself.
Exactly.
At the expense of your dog.
Yeah. You have to kind of take emotions out of dog training, in the sense that you shouldn't be going into training session where you're angry or frustrated, and you shouldn't be shouting or raising your voice at your dog ever. But we shouldn't be hyper emotional and coddle and pet and do all of these things that are going to be super confusing and like basically be Jekyll and Hyde to our dogs, where they can never really depend on what version of us they're going to get. And one of my spiels with send home lessons is, I'm like, everything your dog did prior to training, they're going to go home and they're going to try all of that stuff immediately walking through your door.
Yep.
And you might be tempted to say, they haven't been home for a long time, I just miss my baby. But right off of the bat, you have to be able to set those rules so it isn't more emotionally challenging for your dog as you're settling them back into your home.
Yeah.
The transition's a transition. When they come to the facility, that's a transition. When they go home, it's a transition. So how can we be the best support for our dogs? And that's continuing to enforce boundaries that we care about and that our trainer is discussing with us.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, punishment is not going to ruin your relationship with
No.
your dog. It's not going to affect your relationship. It's not going to make them look at you different and all of this stuff. Inconsistent punishment will.
Yeah.
If you're not a consistent, predictable source of like authority and accountability to the dog that they can look to and feel confident in, then that will affect your relationship. So it's just super important that you take your own emotions out of it and you look at the situation and you just step up to the plate and you just do what you have to do for the sake of your dog at that point.
And another, with like the board and train, again, it's something where it's like, the good thing with the board and train is that, and I think a lot of clients maybe don't think about it this way, I don't know, but it's something where like your dog's already had practice for 4 weeks. Your dog's
Your dog
already
knows
in these
everything.
routines for 4 weeks.
Knows more than you do.
Exactly. So it's something where it's like, and that's why we spend so much time on the drop or on the send home and stuff with the clients, that like trying to get them caught up as much, because obviously it's easier to communicate with the clients in that sense than with the dog. But it's something where they've had that consistency for 4 weeks. So the importance of transferring over isn't as detrimental for the dog as it is for the owners, right? It is harder for the owners in that sense to break the habits, because they had these habits, they brought the dog here, and then they never like had time to practice breaking those habits while the dog was at training. So the dog has the practice already and the understanding of what they should be doing, right, or what they should not be doing. But it's up to the owners to kind of continue those rules.
Yes. And that could be really difficult for people in contrast to the one-on-one lessons where you're physically seeing your dog's progress every week and you're doing certain goals every week. But the board and train, you're picking up a fully trained dog. And sometimes people aren't quite prepared for what that entails when they do come home. And we've had clients in the past that are like, the dog is doing the things that they did before training, and they're not magically fixed. And you have to remember your dog is not a robot, and it's not something you can program. And a dog's success fully relies or depends on what the owner is doing at home and what we're allowing and what we're not allowing, and our timing with corrections, and being able to step up to the plate and like make what we want happen. Because there's a full life out there for you and your dog, and it's waiting for you. But you just have to be able to like put in the things in the place that need to make that happen.
That your dogs need for it to happen.
Yes.
You know, you have to remember you're doing this training to benefit your dog. You know, it's also to benefit you and to you know, open opportunities so you don't have to walk your dog at 5 a.m. and 5,
And
you know,
avoid
whatever,
everything.
at 10 o'clock at night. But it's something that the training really is to help benefit your dog, you know, and that's what you need to kind of remember.
And it drastically will improve your relationship if you do it properly.
Yes.
I've never had a client be like, my relationship is worse with my dog now.
A lot
Like
of people,
When
literally
they've been consistent with the training.
Yeah,
Yes.
like literally has never happened.
Right.
Honestly. And even the people that struggle a little bit with consistency, like they're still not saying that. Like your relationship with your dog will not get worse, you know? And that's why when we talk about like, oh, I just have to show them the remote, if you're going that route with your dog of using like a threat or like an intimidation of a piece of plastic, that has nothing to do with your relationship.
you're not connecting
Your relationship
the
isn't
correction
changing.
to yourself. You're connecting the correction to a physical object.
Yeah.
And your dog should be able to not do those things because you've asked them not to, and you've put in to place the markers and punishment or markers and reward that you need to be able to do to help your dog understand and stop performing those behaviors. So eventually those behaviors become extinct.
Yeah.
Well, and it's just another version of a cop-out.
Yep.
You don't want your dog thinking that you're the one correcting them. You want them to know that don't make me grab the remote. It's not me, you know, it's the remote.
That's a good way
It's
to
the
think
same
about it.
reason that people, for whatever reason, societally have no issue with invisible fences.
Yeah.
Because you're not doing it.
Right.
That's why you're okay with it. You're not the one correcting your dog for going across the boundary in your yard. It's a machine doing it. It's a collar doing it. And it's always been absolutely wild to me that like people don't question invisible fences or electric fences, but they will lose their minds over me pushing the button on a remote.
Yep.
It's like I would much rather be the one guiding and directing my dog than a machine
Right.
that is impersonal.
Yep.
And honestly, it's far more effective. I've had clients that their dog will blast through an invisible fence, but can be off-leash trained with a manual e-collar. It doesn't have any more power behind it.
Yeah.
What's the difference? Oh, the relationship. The dog respects you, so they respect the boundaries. They can't respect like a collar or an invisible line, or it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Yep.
It can be more confusing. Like I had a client text me, and she's very sweet, and she was just really like asking, but she was like, anytime I'm out in public, the dog pulls toward people, and she's like, I don't want to correct for it because I don't want to give the dog a negative association with people because she's already a pit bull, and I don't want people to be scared. And I was like, first of all, it's not going to create a negative association to correct your dog for jumping on guests or when people come over jumping on you. It's not going to hurt your relationship. It's setting a boundary and being able to enforce that boundary. So if your dog ever is uncomfortable with a stranger coming up in its space and petting it, that it never has the ability to snap at them, because then people will be like, oh, that is a pit bull snapping at me.
Yep.
What's
So-
more intimidating, a pit bull out of control pulling on a leash towards you, or a pit bull ignoring you and walking nicely on a
Yes.
loose leash?
Right.
Yeah.
Which one's a little bit more unsettling when you're walking by with you or your dog?
And
And
even
who's
if
in
it's
control in
friendly.
that situation?
Yeah,
The dog or
exactly.
the owner?
Or when
right?
people are like, it's just
Who's
a
making
cute-
the decision at that
Cute
point?
little pit bull, look at it pulling toward the people.
Yeah.
It's just like your dog's out of control, and that's not a good look. And if you're really trying to do right by your breed, you can show public that your dog can be very well behaved and listen to you and be a good example for good in the world and advocate for pit bulls.
Right.
And
by
also,
showing
like,
them.
as an owner of any breed, your priority should not be that other people don't think your dog is scary.
Yes.
You have no control over that.
Right.
Absolutely no control. I just saw a video on TikTok that I thought about saving so that I could share it and be like, every time that you have like a power breed and you decide to get internally offended because someone is uncomfortable with your dog in some way, I wanted to show them this video. Like, it was literally
you have to know that's what's
people.
gonna happen.
Yeah, like it was two people with pit bulls in harnesses, in muzzles, on leash, and they were introducing
Behind
them to
the
each
fence.
other and doing everything wrong. Like, it was the most dangerous, scary, uninformed dog handling that I've ever seen. And I want to be like, because we don't know if you're this person. When I'm walking by you and you have that type of dog or that breed or whatever, I'm saying like I as a general term, the public is walking by you. They don't know. Are you the responsible owner or are you the idiot that does that with their dog and thinks it's fun and funny? Like, we don't know. And so it's not your job to police or dictate how other people feel about your dog. Your job is your dog, right?
That's
and
your
that's the only
responsibility.
thing that you can worry about. And if you control your dog and your dog is well-mannered and well behaved when you're out in public, then when that person walks by, they go, oh, so they did have control of their dog. Good for them.
Yep.
Okay. That's good, you know, but it's not your job to try to be an ambassador for an entire breed that has such a wide variety of temperaments and personalities.
And especially when the breed, like you said, can be dangerous or they can be irresponsible. I'm not putting my name on advocating for any breed that has the propensity to really hurt or injure somebody just because mine is not like that, or mine is a cute little sweet angel, whatever I think.
Especially if yours is like that.
Right.
Like, that's wild too. It's like, if you have a Doberman, a Rottweiler, a Pit Bull, a German Shepherd, whatever, and it has bit people, or it is aggressive, or it's not good with dogs, or it's whatever, and then you go out of your way to still perpetuate this narrative of like, they're such friendly dogs, they're this, they're that.
They love me so much.
Yeah, it's like, just
they would never hurt me.
Just stop. If
Right.
anything, just be quiet for a moment. Just settle down a little bit. Like, it's okay to acknowledge that dogs are not friendly sometimes.
Yep.
That doesn't make the whole breed bad. There's not this gauge of like, for a breed of dog to be good, they have to have no negative attributes or no potential for danger. It's just not, they're predators.
Yeah.
Every predator has a tendency for danger in it.
Absolutely.
That's just how they are.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to reframe in your relationship with your dog. I think as a whole, people need to reframe and be willing to be the bad guy every once in a while.
So you don't have to be the bad guy in the future, because if you set your rules now and you're able to be consistent, that you're not dealing with this 6 months from now. You're not even dealing with it. If you get things under control, you can see success immediately. Like within 2 weeks, 1 week, whatever your goals are specifically. Like jumping is very easy to move past.
Yep.
And some people are like, it's our 6 month dealing with jumping and we're trying this and that. Just like put an end to the behavior.
Right.
Yeah.
Like be the person who your dog needs you to be, and not the person that you think your dog wants you to be. Like leading with affection and leading with like softness, because that never ends well. And then you're perpetuating just feeling frustrating and spinning your wheels with your dog rather than enjoying every moment you have with them, because their life is short.
Yep.
And I'd rather not resent my dog and move past things. You know, that's the truth.
Yeah. There's a big reason why when clients come in for lessons or for follow-ups or even for like daycare or something, you know, they walk in the facility, they go, they are so well behaved when they come here. That is a big giveaway that you're not doing something at home. You know?
Yeah.
I love every client, but that is a big giveaway that, that there's a reason that they're doing so well here and not at home. you know?
interesting to sometimes we offer like in-home sessions for certain clients or certain situations when we feel like it's necessary in order to like get the full picture.
Yeah.
So one thing that like since I've been doing in-home lessons is there's so many things that you can't even like describe, like owners can't even describe.
Yeah,
to
it's
you.
kind of like we were talking about last time. Like you don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
So it's like a lot of the times they think they're doing the things they need to be doing, but then once you get there and you look at the situation,
you
you're
can
like,
see like 10 things
oh,
immediately.
this.
And they're like, what? And it's just like all of the nuances of dog training. This is why it's so important to find a company that's going to offer you follow-up support and continue to grow with you and develop your skills and point out things to you that otherwise you would never know.
Yeah.
There's just so many things when you go to an in-home session that people wouldn't even think to bring up that is a major piece in the puzzle of why they're not seeing success or why they're struggling with things. So it's really interesting.
And that's what I love about like the relationship building with clients and stuff is because, you know, it isn't always just them purposely leaving stuff out. It's just them not thinking about it, you know, or
they're not dog trainers.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so it's good to kind of like have those relationships where you can feel comfortable just saying like, well, this is clearly something that like a small issue that you didn't notice, but we can work on, you know, being in the in-home, or if they just like bring it up, sometimes even in the facility, they'll, you know, be talking about a situation or something. And all you have to do is kind of like pry a little bit more to like, okay, so what exactly happened here? And it'll give you more insight as like the trainer to be like, okay, so that's a small detail that we can kind of switch, you know?
Yep.
But yeah.
Yeah, like they don't necessarily know that like allowing their dog to bark out the window at things directly correlates to reactivity when they're walking. Like they don't know those things are pieced together.
Or they feel like if the dog's behavior in the house is controllable, but you go there and you see all of these things that they could be guiding the dog with, and then they seemingly have a lot of issues when they go out of their house. We can't expect our dogs to listen to us in the house or outside of the house if they can't listen in the house.
Yeah, you have to like capitalize and like build rapport and like leverage on those things.
Yep.
Like, you know, if you don't have control over your own child in the house, if you go out in public, it's 10 times worse when you're out in public, right? Because there's so many different factors and variables and, you know, the lollipops and the candy bars and all those things, right? And it's like if you can't, like if you can't get your kid under control and listened and structured like in a household setting, then you're definitely going to structure or have issues like out and about.
And that's why like I always suggest like taking advantage of the easy stuff, you know, use that as a stepping stone to get to the hard stuff that you're really struggling with outside or stuff, you know, like work on the jumping inside, work on reactivity or whatever it may be inside or even in the backyard. So that way, you know, it is in a somewhat more controlled situation that you can address and, you know, really get across the message to your dog. So that way, when you do take them out and they're reactive on the leash, they know what they're getting corrected for and they know how to fix it. And that, you know, I feel like it just helps smooth things out so much faster. You know,
well, they believe
you. Yeah. If you wait to work a bed stay and like when your neighbors or friends come over and that's the first time you're practicing it, of course it's going to be a mess. You don't have the practice or confidence. The dog doesn't care about it. You know, they're not expecting any rules or criteria. So it's always going to be so much harder than if you know someone's coming over for a party on Saturday or something to watch a game or whatever, right? Practice leading up to that, even just a couple repetitions or a couple minutes of duration or something, just to give them that practice as well as yourself, you know, and it'll help the situation so much better.
Yes. And like putting in that practice is going to help your dog understand what you want from them rather than like, oh, I really mean it right now and I'm going to nail you for this. And then we see this extreme response in dogs because they're not used to taking you seriously. And then they're like, oh, you corrected me. And then that's where we see the pouting, which is really hard for people to work through because you feel like you made your dog sad.
Yeah.
Where really your inconsistency and your lack of being able to direct your dog is what's making your dog feel more nervous around you.
Yeah.
And in turn, harming your relationship in the future if you're so willy-nilly about when you're serious versus when you're, you know, free.
And here's another one too. If I have a lot of clients that, they're like, my mom's coming over, my aunt's coming over or something, and they're really against the e-collar, right?
Oh,
And I'm scared, or I know I'm not going to want to correct, or I'm nervous to correct in front of them because...
Whose dog is it?
Right. Exactly. Right. But it's also coming to the point of, like, again, practice prior to. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have to. You might still have to correct, and I hope you still do. But if you're practicing up until that point, the practice makes perfect. So get your dog to the point where they're going to be okay, and you can hopefully not have to do it because you've built up that practice and the understanding. But if you wait till that moment and then you're nervous to correct in front of your guests, or you're scared of the repercussions of what your guests will say if you give a correction, like it makes the situation so much harder.
Yes.
If anyone ever in my own home muttered any type of judgment, like if you have just a basic question, absolutely, we can talk all about it.
Yeah.
But if you have a hint of an undertone of judgment about how I manage and handle my own dogs in a way that you're trying to make me feel like bad or uncomfortable about it, you will never be coming back.
Yeah.
You will probably be asked to leave the instant that you do that.
Yes.
Like, who do you think you are? That you can come into my home and question how I decide to humanely control and handle my own dogs.
Yep.
This is not your place.
Yeah. I had an example in my real life where there are certain dogs that I won't allow my pet sitters to watch because their behavior needs managed in such a way. And I was like watching my cameras one time when the pet sitter came, and Spork's like launching at their faces. So after that, I was like, I would like Spork to be corrected. Are you comfortable with utilizing the e-collar? And the response was like, no, I would feel bad using it. Yeah. And like, I don't really care because that Spork doesn't do that to me, but I need him held accountable for those behaviors because I can't have him doing that.
Yeah.
Right.
So I just kind of avoid the situation and board him where I know that people are going to hold him accountable consistently rather than like allowing that behavior to go on.
Yeah.
So
and at least you were able to have that conversation, and get an honest response, like at least she felt comfortable honestly telling you no.
yeah,
I don't
she said
feel
I
comfortable.
feel bad. Yeah.
And so that's perfect. Again, at that point, it's your responsibility as the owner to be like, okay, what else do I need to do to ensure that my dog is going to be okay?
Yes.
So that's awesome.
And
Yeah.
Sunday, forget about it. That girl.
Sunday would die.
Yes.
If you just boarded her or you just had somebody watch her and went on a trip, like you'd come back to her in a casket.
Yes.
She's dead. She's done so.
My mom watched her like for my honeymoon, and I look back and I'm like, why did I do that? Like, why did I allow that? And Sunday had a week, like loaf of bread gone, my pair of glasses gone, and all the affection that my mom was like, oh, she misses her mom, I want to give her extra attention. Sunday was like, she's like,
Whatever you
don't
wanna
say
say.
like dogs are purposely manipulative, but
No.
Sunday,
They just know. There's some dogs that make me question it though.
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
But like, there's just something about a hound that they are
Yes.
just like, again. And I was talking to a client about this the other day too. I was like, they often get attributed even the word like stubborn to them a lot. And I think in a dog, I don't know if a dog is capable of being stubborn. I just think that their agenda rarely aligns with ours.
Yeah.
Like they just have their plan and what they want to do and what's important to them and what they want to accomplish. And that never really is the same as ours. We don't ever share the same goals.
Yeah.
And so it seems stubborn or it seems manipulative or whatever. But it's like Sunday just knows if I do these certain things, then I typically get something out of it that I'm hoping to get.
Yes, and with myself and my husband, she knows that she can't get away with those behaviors. But I've literally watched her, like when I have like guests over and they're paying attention to her, petting her pushy behaviors because she's like, they're not stopping me.
Yep.
So she needs like held reliable, like, or I don't know, my brain.
She needs held
Loading.
accountable
She needs held
consistently.
accountable consistently and reliably, and that can't happen with
Just
miracle.
anyone. Yeah. Yeah. Like I'll take her for sleepover sometimes when you're gone and she's boarding. and like in my house and everything, because it's a very similar environment to like what you enforce.
Yes.
It's the same. But it's funny because the first time I brought her to my house, she kind of was just like, woo, like
Didn't she try to eat a sandwich out of Owen's hand?
yes,
Oh my gosh.
yes, she did, and she got nailed for it, and she was like,
She's
I
never
am
allowed
on
to stay
my
with
P's
me
and
then.
Q's
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, she's
I would be a
It's-
bad influence on someone.
and it goes to show you that how Sunday is accident.
Are you having a stroke?
I'm stroking out today.
Please put both of your arms up and down.
Is it anybody smelling toast?
Do the stroke test.
She's excellently trained. I feel like
Yes.
I've done a lot of work with this dog. She
Yeah.
knows what's up, but
Yeah.
she will take opportunities.
Oh, 100%.
She's also not dumb.
She's an opportunist. Yeah. It's the same way that like Lumos is impeccably trained. Like he's very well trained.
Yeah.
But like if I just gave him to somebody,
The rover
he's
sitter came over. and-
yeah, like he's not just gonna be like, I'm trained, so
Yeah.
I will walk nice on a leash for you. I won't try to bite
Let me show
anybody.
you
I
everything
will
I
be
know.
so good. Look at my handstand. Like he's not. That's not happening for you. I'm sorry.
Depends on like how they're being held accountable when you're away. And even the most well-trained dog is not a robot that's just naturally gonna fit into every situation and be like, I'm perfect. It's like you have to be the person that's like guiding their behavior. And with me, my relationship with my dog is they know not to push anymore.
Yeah.
They're
That
dogs.
leadership role.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, we've all seen kids that like they know when they're at grandma's and when they're at mom's. Like they just know the different set of rules and expectations and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be hard.
So do you want to be a grandma to your dog or do you want to be a mom?
Right.
You don't you
Exactly.
can't be their friend.
And do you want your dog to feel safe with you? Or do you want your dog to feel nervous being around you because you're inconsistent about everything?
If you're allowing your dog to try to take charge in situations, especially where they're nervous they're most likely going to result in that fight or flight and having to be nippy or barky or put up that wall, you know? If they're put in a situation where they're nervous and you know it and you take charge, you will see them relax so much faster, and then being able to kind of understand, okay, mom is in charge. She is taking the leadership role. I can take a step back and just listen to what she has to say, because I know whatever she's going to tell me to do is to benefit me in that situation where I don't have to feel like I'm cornered and put in this position that I have to kind of like push back. you
Yeah.
know?
Well, and actually an interesting idea going off of like the inconsistency with punishment and then that concept that you just talked about is like a lot of people, another version of falling into unintentionally being inconsistent is when, so say you have a dog that's fearful and they don't like people or they don't like other dogs. And because of all of our training we're doing, like their confidence is going up, right? And then you have them out in public and suddenly your dog is like, I want to go say hi to that person. And you've never seen them like that before. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is great. They want to go see someone. And they start, walking towards breaking maybe their command or whatever they're in. And they want to go see the person. So we're just so excited that they have confidence and they want to go see that we let them go, And everything's fine for a while. And that works out for you. And then suddenly one day, your dog's excited to go see someone. They go up to them. And then suddenly that changes. And now they're nervous again and they snap and they growl or they lunge at them. And then you're like, where did this come from? Everything seemed like it was going so good. And where it came from is that your rules changed. Everything you did that built the confidence and got you to the success of them feeling neutral and even better, like comfortable and even a little curious about interacting with people. When the moment that you stopped holding them accountable to standards that made them confident, you immediately started eroding the confidence that you just built.
Absolutely.
Where you see success because of the Ecollar training or because of the way you're doing things, and you're like, oh, this is awesome. Now I can like stop and I can cut back on things and I can change the way I'm doing things and I don't have to be as strict. And then your dog is left being like, oh, I can get away with all of these things now. Or they take notice of when they're not corrected for something that you previously corrected them for. And instead of the behavior continuing to get better, it's starting to get worse again because you've changed the way you're doing things and you've changed your consistency level with them. And that's not how dog training works. You don't just go for 6 months and then your dog's magically cured. The e-collar and punishment is like a lifelong thing where we're hoping not to have to use it every day, all day, but it's the seatbelt of like, I don't put my seatbelt on in the car. Well, I do put my seatbelt on the car, but I don't think I'm going to get into a crash, but it's there just in case.
Yeah. Just
you don't know.
Yep.
Well, and that's another good point too of like, I think another trap that people fall into is maybe they were very committed to the training. They did a great job with the e-collar. Everything's going beautifully. And then, they're like, oh, we're going to start phasing this out. Like, I don't need to. I always tell people that like there is a worse outcome if you try to phase it out too soon than if you just overdo it and you just have them wearing it consistently for like an obscene amount of time. Because the moment that you don't have the e-collar on and you are in a context or a situation where you need to correct something and you can't, or you don't because you don't have the e-collar, there are other ways to correct things beyond an e-collar, or you don't, that is the moment the dog realizes that your control is situational and dependent on something else.
Yes.
And that can't happen. So it's not, when I tell clients, like, you have to use this e-collar and have them wearing it very consistently and needs to become a part of your routine for the next whatever long. It's not as much about the e-collar being a huge piece of it. It's that the e-collar is just the easiest way most of the time to be able to correct a dog for something.
Yep.
It's more so about the mentality of like, you have to be willing and ready and able to, if these behaviors pop up, address them when it happens.
Yes.
And if the e-collar is the easiest way to do that, then we have to be consistent about having that accessible to us when we need it. And if you don't have the e-collar on, we have to address it some other way.
Yeah.
So it's not that the e-collar is this magic thing that has to be on all the time. It's that you have to be on all the time.
Yes. And
Like-
dogs make mistakes. Like, I was completely shocked the other day. My routine every day is I let Sunday out of the car and off leash. She walks from my driveway to my front door. And like, she's never
The
done
hound
this.
had other plans.
Yes. So we turn the corner and there's a guy in the driveway, in my neighbor's driveway, that looks similarly to Justin. So she turns the corner and she starts sprinting up to this man that has like all these groceries in his hands and he has 2 kids. And she's just like, Dad? And just like takes off. And it literally gave me a heart attack because I live on a busy road. There's a car coming.
Yeah.
I instantly took that button and I corrected her and she was like, whoa! And she came immediately back to me. But in that instance, if I did not have the e-collar on, she'd be, 1, getting away with a behavior that was just so asinine. And 2, like, could she have gone into the street?
Right.
And so instead of that potentially having been a moment where you were unprepared and Sunday was like, haha, I got away with it. And then now in the back of her head, she always knows, but there was that one time that I was able to do that. Instead of that, it was a very valuable learning lesson where she said, well, shit, I don't think I should do that again.
I
next
know
time.
I'm not supposed to do that, and Mom caught me trying to do it,
And
so I know I'm going to get caught
Exactly.
every time.
And the key here is that, so you had her e-collar on. So having her off leash, you knew you had a way to hold her accountable if you needed to. If you didn't have the e-collar on, you'd put her on a leash and you'd walk her in.
Yeah.
So again, guys, it's not that like the e-collar has to be on all the time. It's that you have to be making sure you're aware of if the e-collar isn't on, and that is my way of addressing certain behaviors the easiest. If that behavior comes up, how am I going to be addressing it in another way.
To help my dog learn from that mistake, or being able to prevent mistakes if you're not in a position to correct your dog for it. And that really scared me, like when she ran toward the street, and that was like very humbling. And now we do things a little bit differently, where instead of her being able to run ahead and run to the door, she has to be in that come command from the time that we're exiting the car to the time of the front door, because that I saw that was a mistake, and I saw my leniency in letting her run to the front door was so natural and every day in our habit. But we have to change our habit when we started to notice like the dangers, and her just having the free will to be like, bye.
Yep. That was we just recently moved, and so Sully's had to get used to accommodating to having the yard and the driveway and stuff. And yeah, he tried pushing it with Mallory the other day. Getting out of the car, same thing, and just walking up to the back porch, but he started just walking down the driveway, just like nonchalant, like, all right, see ya. Yeah, like he knew he was doing something wrong, but he wanted to
test it.
Yeah, he wasn't like full on like see you later, but he was kind of like, I'm gonna see how far I can go. And the second she noticed it, gave him that correction, he came right back, and he hasn't done it since, so yeah, it's very similar, that they'll always, if they have the possibility of trying to push it, expect them to try it eventually, you know?
And you want to be in a position where you're able to address it and safely carry on like doing off leash stuff, because that's really important to me.
Yeah.
And I could look at that and be like, oh my God, she can't be off leash anymore. But I was prepared in that moment, and she got a big old correction for doing that. And she was definitely reactive. She came immediately back to me. So I know that worked. And I know that is a way to get her to come back to me each time, because she's been trained how to do so. And if she makes little mistakes here or there, at least I have the Ecollar on to prevent her from going out into the street or making that full mistake. Because I do want to continue to do off-leash things with her.
Yeah. Well, and everything about dog training is like risk and reward. And it's like, I would rather allow my dog 99% of the time to be fully off leash, enjoying themselves, having the utmost freedom that a dog could want, knowing that 1% of the time I would have to nail them potentially for doing something silly that they shouldn't have done. And to me, that reward great outweighs like the con of having to punish my dog.
Yes.
It's like
absolutely
the fear of like, I mean, because likely, so I can think of like a situation with Snoop even. It was a similar moment where it gave me a heart attack because this was years ago. But I had gotten home from work. It was like a thunderstorm, lightning, rain, whatever. And every time I get home, I live in a house. Like I just let them out of the car, out of their kennels, and they just go up to the door, whatever. And they're ready to go inside. And I like get all my stuff out. Again, it's raining, it's hectic, whatever. I'm trying to get inside. And I look, and Snoop was like, phew, and he went right across the yard and in between the two houses after something, Yeah. He saw something and he said, I'm going for it. And of course he had his e-collar on, and I turned that thing all the way up and I held that button down. And his little screaming booty came all the way back around the corner. And I was like, are you in the middle of a thunderstorm?
Right.
It's like 9 p.m.
This is when you decide to do this?
Yeah, this is when you decide it's a good idea. And so again, it's like, if I wasn't prepared to be able to do that, then that would have 100, like, what is a better option for his life? To keep him on leash forever and never allowed him to have off leash freedom, or to have to do that twice in his entire 3 years of living.
Yeah.
There was one other time I had to do that, and then that time. And then every other time he's been off leash, which is probably thousands at this point, have been successful. There's like there's no comparison to me. Like, it's not a question.
Yeah. So, like, we may sit here and talk about how important it is to be consistent, and people can always be like, oh, they're just so strict with their dogs. They're like drill sergeants. And it's like, I don't have to live my life as a drill sergeant and be super on top of my dog and micromanage them, because my day-to-day is very consistent with them, and they know the expectation and they can depend on that.
Yeah.
And that allows me to give them a beautiful, free life rather than nailing them for everything and then wondering why they're not consistently doing what I ask from them, or they're consistently displaying behaviors I don't want them to display, because I took accountability and I showed them, if you do that, if you do X, Y happens.
Yep.
And then they stop doing X.
Like, they honestly behave probably more like dogs than someone who doesn't, I would venture to say, train with punishment. Because I don't have to micromanage them to avoid triggers and behaviors I don't like and all of this kind of stuff. Like, when I live with my dogs on a day-to-day basis, the commands I ask them to do, I mean, maybe 5 a day. Like, I can't, I honestly, like, when I walk them in from my car, like, I'm truly trying to think. When I walk them from my house to my car, I tell them to come. They get in my car. We come here. I tell them to come, to go inside. I maybe put them on like a bed or a place one time throughout the day as a management. If I'm on the main floor with them and there's dogs walking by or whatever, like, I don't have to micromanage them. I'm not putting them in sits all the time and in downs all the time and in beds all the time and in comes all the time, because if they just know not to jump on people. They know not to go up to dogs that they're not allowed to. They know how to, so it's like, and when I'm at home, they probably get 0 commands.
Yeah. Well, and with the consistency, like, at least like with Lumos and stuff, because you've had him so long, like, theoretically speaking, you wouldn't even need to tell him come necessarily.
No,
like,
he just
because
knows.
it's that routine. Like,
Condition,
you're consistent, so you do still give those. But realistically, could you get away with giving him 0 commands?
Oh, 100%.
Absolutely. Right?
Yeah, because
like,
like,
it's because you've drilled such consistency with him.
yeah, he just knows the routines of like what we do, and that's just how it is.
But
No matter, like, even if you're not using punishment, you have to be consistent with your positive reinforcement constantly. And that's not something that's a trial period. That's something that you have to commit to lifelong.
Right.
So, like, when you're looking at training your dog, you have to be committed to reinforcing their behaviors throughout the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And your management may change, or your needs may change when you get past the big humps. But realistically, training a dog is a lifetime thing. And you're not ever just out of training.
yeah.
You know?
Yep. So be consistent. Ask questions if you need them. What else?
I think that's the theme.
That's
Be
it.
consistent. Just, step up to the plate. Stop avoiding being the bad guy. Do what your dog needs you to do. Because guess what? Then you won't, the more willing you are to be the bad guy, the less you'll have to be the bad guy.
Yes, exactly.
That should be the thing.
That's really what it comes down to. Like, again, I had to be the bad guy to Snoop twice in his 3 years when he was off leash, and I haven't had to do it again.
You can enjoy him fully to the extent that his little amazing personality.
He's the best.
Gentle parenting doesn't always work with dogs.
No, there's
And
no
it doesn't
such
work with
thing.
humans.
There's no, and it doesn't, honestly. Permissive parenting doesn't work with anybody.
Yeah.
So you're the adult, you're the human in your human dog relationship, and you need to act like it.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Use your evolved brain. Okay, and your reasoning skills and your logic to understand and remove the emotion from it, that you know what's best for your dog and you're doing what's right for them and what keeps them safe, and stop caring about how you feel and how they feel and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
If you have any other questions, comments,
We're gonna
let us
go
know.
train dogs.
Yeah.
And
We're
not
going to get
just-
out of our armchairs
Yes.
and we're going to go train dogs now.
Yeah.
Yes.
So catch you later.
Bye, guys.